Hey everybody, this is a follow-up video to the release of my project Vigil. I kind of want to go over, just for people who are interested, on how the UI actually works. Let's kind of go over the basics. The UI has been made again, similar to how Luigi, the UI library Luigi works. It's a retained mode library that is pretty good in my opinion. I've changed it again towards what I like, towards what I want. My old project Todool was also the same, was done the same way with the retained mode, and this new project Vigil is pretty much taking the same stance on it. And I really just want to show or go over how I've done some of the tech behind it. So I've written a blog post, with AI, but over some form of outline that I gave it. And it's a long blog post with intricate details, but really I just kind of want to show you how it looked before, which is this here. This is kind of how it started out looking. And you can see this kind of the problem that I had is it looks very basic, very simple. And, I didn't feel like I could publish something like this at this state. And that kind of led me down to searching through, in what ways can I do a UI that looks better than like this, or looks good as this. And primarily, I went down the rabbit hole and I kind of explained what I tried, what didn't succeed. So in this case, you also have to think about my limitation here, which is software rendering. So software rendering is pretty limiting in the way that it's you cannot really do much. And anything you do per pixel is very expensive. So I talk about this here. I tried out SDF rendering for rounded rectangles. That's pretty cool, but kind of worthless because that really only achieves the rounded rectangles. I've looked into doing vector rendering on the CPU. That does work, but for kind of large scale things, it just doesn't quite work out. And really the last thing I ended up with on software rendering is image rendering, which you can see here. I kind of gave it a try over the development here, and you can see this kind of the first achievement I had with the UI. Now it doesn't look great in this example yet, but the idea was kind of make some assets, some atlas or whatever, and in software rendering an image is very, very simple. Or it's not, it's simple in the way that it's just a copy of the bitmap into some region on the screen that you want. So it's simple in that way. And then obviously the image can be crazy or whatever you want. And that's really a power of this. And the way we achieve this is with 9 slicing, or I also have 3 slicing for like horizontal and vertical elements. And you can read up on this in detail. And then it's about also how do we do the assets for this. So in this case, you can see I tried out pixel art generation, or like through AI and stuff like that. That was pretty bad. It resulted in a lot of headaches, and particularly another issue is we can see with my final, like this is my final atlas, for example. And then I also have the layout JSON, which it's a big file describing kind of where everything is within this atlas, and this sort of stuff needs to be kept up to date when you change anything, or per per UI element or per asset, this data needs to exist. It needs to be somewhere. And my blog post mostly goes over all of this in detail on kind of what I struggled with. And the first real solution for me was an SVG pipeline where you have some form of SVGs, or for each element you have an SVG. So you have like a button SVG, button active SVG, and you would just kind of render them through your own pipeline into some atlas. And that was basically my idea, and it did work out for pretty much the most time here. And also with AI, I generated like a website for me to like preview what these would look like. That sort of thing was kind of useless overall, I have to say. But the thing that I just kind of realized is AI is pretty bad at generating SVGs. SVG is not really a good format, or it is a good format in a way that it works on browsers and all that stuff. But you will see, I talk about this here with Affinity. Affinity, for example, has some SVG output, but it's also just kind of simulating it. So like if you have a shadow effect in Affinity and then you export to SVG, it's just kind of putting that shadow in there as a kind of a bitmap. So it's faking it. That's what I'm trying to say. So with tools that output to SVG, it's just kind of limiting. And also we have the big conundrum that we have some metadata that we want to provide per file. So each SVG also would have had some JSON data or whatever description data. And then I kind of went down this route of a metadata editor. So I could have some SVG files laying around, and then I would have some editor be able to edit those. Very crazy. I think I may even have some projects laying around for that. Let me see, can I find anything quick? VG Atlas, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, so it would look like this. I haven't shared this, but the basic idea was this. And then there was edit. Let's see, can we edit? No. But it was pretty bad, right? And I think that's kind of what it came down to. All this stuff, it was pretty bad for me to work with or work on. The metadata stuff was just kind of bad in general. You can see here, just this month, I started just working on my own vector format. Since that is a lot easier, and you can see Vigil now has just the assets folder for me locally. And then I have here MVG. You can see for Vigil, I have components here, and you can see I have a component or an MVG file per component. And this doesn't really say much, but like if we go to button, for example, and we open this in, let's see, Z. So this is how an MVG file looks in this case. And you can see it's essentially just a description of how the asset should look. So here's the metadata part. Then in general, how a button would look in terms of render commands. So a rectangle and a path or whatever. And then there's also variants. This is very important for UI. So in this case, I have a variant hover. Then it does some commands or some special rendering. Then a variant pressed, and then a variant focused. So this feels a lot like CSS in a way, where really you just want to have like one shared thing, which in this case was the render commands for here. And then, on hover, we do these commands or something. And then the important thing is a button is exported, is exporting to this atlas, to this big atlas with all of its variants. So I know this file it kind of looks bad, but for all of this stuff, I've done an editor as well for me to just kind of look at. So I can open up a folder here for, what do we have? DarkX. Here we can just open this folder, and this MVG Studio is just kind of an overview of these things. So if I go over to button, this is, for example, how it would look, right? So if we go to source code for this, this is actually the same as the left side of this with some syntax highlighting. And you can see the asset stuff, again, the commands, and then the variants here that we have. And if I go back to preview, this is kind of how it looks by default. And then I can go over to hover. You can see on hover, it adds 2 paths and then does the rectangle in a different color. And on focus, it has an outside rectangle. So pretty cool, I think, overall. I like it a lot. And this viewer is cool in a way that it shows you the effects. So this would be at 1x. You can see the vector rendered result would look like this. And then at 2x, 4x, and such and so forth. So pretty cool overall. And yeah, we could do live changes here as well. So on button, if I go back to here, if I don't like the symbol that we have, I could also say red 5, for example. And then if we hit save, it would do a different gradient. So if I undo that, save again, we're back to the original. So pretty cool. That's what MVG Studio is about, or I don't know. It's just kind of a tool for me to look at the data that we have here, kind of render it just within this application, and also allow me to optionally edit some of these MVG files. But really, MVG is just it's an SVG alternative that's very deeply rooted into my UI in this case, or for UI in general, I think. And it's very useful in that way. Maybe something more interesting would be checkbox, right? It doesn't look too crazy, but if we go over to the hovered, you can see it. All of these things are just within one file. That's the important thing. And it's a simple file, and it's a simple format in a way. And I think the most interesting thing, all of this stuff here, all of the results that we have, those were actually AI generated. So AI is pretty good at the more verbose, or the more simple the format is, the more simple time the AI has to render these effects or these elements or these vector graphics, right? So if I open up MVG Studio again here, you can see here, like, these are my examples that I had. And you can see I can even have effects in here, such as here, somewhere there should be effects. But in this case, a common UI effect that I had was, how was it called again? Skeuomorphic or something like this. These are just like UI effects. And that's the important thing I try to do, which is, since it's a custom vector renderer backend that we have for MVG, it's really up to us how we generate some of these things. So what you can see here, all these elements essentially look the same. They have the same background, the same skeuomorphic effect, and then some content inside. And that's the basic idea here as well. You can have a checkbox that essentially looks the same with the same perfect effect, and you don't have to go into Affinity and have like 10,000 effects and then, oh, finally I've achieved the skeuomorphic effect. So that was pretty much about it. And you can see it can generate a few cool things here. I also added an effect to have like non-linear edges and stuff like this for this. It's not perfect, but you can see it is pretty good at that. So organic checkbox here at a lower resolution. It's pretty cool. Like this. I think this looks pretty cool. So, and like I said, all of this stuff is AI generated, so it's pretty simple to just kind of tell AI, hey, here's a format, here's the vector graphics, kind of what it can do overall. And MVG itself, I'm not sure if I'm going to ship this as like a open source thing. I can, or I could if people are interested. And pretty much it's just a CLI, and you can tell the AI to, here's all the capabilities of the AI. And then in my case, I just have a visual folder, which has a bunch of MVG files. It can then render them at once, so to single files, which is very helpful for like iterative feedback loops in AI. And then in my case, I just need a packed solution, or like take all the renderers and then pack them into an atlas, and then I can finally use this in my project. So yeah, very complex, I guess, but it achieves one thing for me, which is having an atlas be generated that I can use for all of my UIs essentially. So yeah. That's about it. That's MVG. That's the tool that I have as well here. Accompanying tool. I could work more on this. This is just like I just let AI generate this project in the meantime to kind of go over it. But yeah, you can see, or you can read up more on this later here. I think it's very interesting for me as a developer or as a UI developer, since I can now just tell AI to, let's generate this here, whatever this is, Atlas panel. Oh, I need this in my UI. Oh, I need this in my UI. And I guess maybe another interesting thing, if we go back here, to a folder, porcelain. So this is my light theme. There's also a theme MVG file, which doesn't really get rendered, but instead it has a lot of symbols. So you can think of this as like all the colors that would be used within MVG, or within all these other ones that then get referenced here through the surface inset. You can see the color that it would be, which is this color. And in this way, all your MVG files also don't really provide any colors. They are just taken from one MVG kind of global theme. This makes life a little bit easier when you actually want to modify these colors and have your life be a little bit easier at modifying things. So yeah, that's about it. MVG I think is pretty cool. I think it's going to be the future that I will have for my UIs, or software rendered UIs in this case. But maybe it's also helpful to some other people. I don't know. let me know your thoughts on this, and yeah, have a good one. And also make sure to check out Vigil if you haven't seen it. This uses MVG output results to render the final UI. If you haven't seen it or haven't seen the other video on it, you can see here, for example, the solarized uses the wavy edges here, which is pretty cool. So yeah.